So the definition for gods, right, is a Germanic term, not the previous, I said previous, not the subsequent definition, but the previous understandings of when it came into fruition. So gods, goods, Woden, shit like that. It goes in the same letter collaboration because you have more than one alphabet, and the true alphabet, they're actually words. So that definition through that premise is the one who absorbs the souls after the war. So giving that to the divine and then having a question asked, because I'm preceding the knowledge of that understanding, which is old. I'm going farther back with a respect value to the supreme almighty creator of all things. And that retrospect fell to an existence that took place through happenstance. So what I mean by that is everything that's here is a dwindle down, it's a wash down, it's a dilution. So there's nothing new under no process of energy. It's just filtered, and then you find out the best way to deal with these situations. This is why we are to do greater things than what perceived us, because we are to learn from these understandings. So let's go back to the concept of what that was. Why is that prevalent here as a definition through that aspect of reality opposed to comprehending the universal understanding? So happenstance took place. When happenstance took place in the emergence of the supreme almighty energy coming into nothingness, things just created. Keep in mind, this is a pure energy of creation. So before it's directional, things were being created, right? As it came with this giant, vast amount of presence. As it came, things were being created, but they didn't get a chance to, what we like to say, travel across the whole existence, because that's the job of the light. So there's an energy that's stabilizing too. So as things are being created, this boom comes into existence. This is where you get the word womb from. So this womb, it's an effect. As it came into existence, that was also used as a absorbing aspect. This is why the wave ended up being female, the negative polarity, because anything coming from that creation was positively created, but it wasn't purposely created. So that means it would have been incomplete in some forms, even at its greatest. So those things had to be pulled in through the negative force and ciphered. So that means that energy had to be taken from that, and we call it a soul. So that divine energy had to be taken from that creation, placed back into the source of all things, and that whatever material was had to be spread across the universe. And that was the first premise to that. So if you haven't watched or got into my incremental science or even travel with me this far, I've done bills speaking about the kings that sit around the source of energy, and they're large. They're bigger than can be understood. You know, we do test on seeing suns that are larger than the suns that we have. That is not even a speck of dust to the size of these throne-like images, that they're thrones that have light being, they're completely full divine light, but they sit eons away from the Almighty, and they just sit around it in a large circle. But in their mass, for the view to look at it directly, you would see that as large. But that's the pristine balance to the flow that comes out. So energy comes through them because that's the purest form of an energetic representation. That is the direction. They sit like kings, but they're not physical beings. They don't have like skin. They're just light, you know, and through what it harnesses outward and reflection. So that's because the light extends and it washes up against the edge, and then it comes back. And as it comes back, it creates the aspect of Pisces. That's two waves hitting each other, and then when they come into each other, they start to go past each other, making a circle in the middle. That's the woman's two thighs and her vagina. But those pretenses wasn't conscious. That was a value. So the king is the direction, and king, K-I-N-G, that's inging. That ing is the majority of the word, which is the process of continuance. So that K would have to been something in particular to a value, something I haven't quite understood because it's so far down in the alphabet. And that alphabet was created by man. So just using that word as a retrospective value in understanding, because that's how we communicate that value. So that would be that lineage, that main lineage in that particular direction as it broke off like this. So it started like this and then it broke off. So this is how in certain situations you had 12 kings, like here. We had 12 kings or 13 kings that sat around a table that created all the original beings, and they were placed in certain spots around the whole entire plane of existence. This is why when they tell you about, the original man and all this, and I'm like, that's not true. They know that's not true because the family names was etched in stone. Like, it was already placed here. You know what I'm saying? The original popes, the original artists, the original financial values, the original cultivators, like everybody had gifts upon their creation from their particular king, and they were placed in their dilution aspect to figure out the other universal aspects. So they asked questions like, how were they able to comprehend these universal understandings? That's because it came with them within their light existence. So that was what they were tasked to do while they were here in this physical body. It's to look at it at the finite level. So just like we got microscopes, we were the microscopes to the divine understanding. We were a living version of. So imagine if you can look into a microscope, and then while you looking down, and the cells tell you stuff. The cells be like, hey man, this is what's going on. I see you checking us out, but this is what the problem we got going on. We need you to give us X, Y, Z. That's who we are to the universe, supposedly. But that had to be comprehended, you know what I'm saying, through the value, instead of following the job and being the antibodies to whatever that would disturb these particular seeds on the lowest level. They decided to be the germ because of their combatants against the light which created them. That's like in your body, if your white blood cells don't act right, you gonna go figure out why. You know what I'm saying? Like, why shit ain't fighting shit off? You know what I'm saying? Like, you gonna want to know why. And it's like that. But I know I went way somewhere else off of the value of what I was talking about. But that's the point in its whole value. You know what I'm saying? Like, so as those points of existence, that's like the major aspect. So if you want to talk about lineage, lineage, that's what that is. That's why it becomes more of a physical representation here, as far as the likeness or the genes, right? The likeness or the genes. So that speaks to the extending of that king from that base of the original aspect of creator. So we sit right next to the divine, you know what I'm saying, to the almighty energy, and formulated by that energy. That energy is what gives existence to those beings. They don't know no other law than the almighty. They don't know anything else. Their comprehension is not to express love. It's to be the solidarity of that as a value in creation. So people don't comprehend none of this. They don't know anything. They're believing in something that's resonant here, when the distance in between here and there is no word to explain it. NAGA the wise.